I'm Cameron Wells. I'm 34. I live just outside Austin, Texas, in a one-bedroom rental above a laundromat that smells like dryer sheets and resignation. And last Monday at 9:13 p.m., my own mother called to tell me I was officially erased from the family estate. No hello, no, how are you? Just her voice, calm as ever, like she was confirming a dinner reservation. Your name's not in the will, Cameron. It's final. Best if you just accept that and move on. 7 seconds. That's all it took. And then she hung up. I stared at the wall for a full minute after. Not because I didn't believe it. Deep down, I'd seen it coming. But because something in me had still hoped I was wrong. That maybe, for once, I'd mattered enough to be considered. But I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just said out loud, to no one, "Okay then. Let me back up. My family owns a pretty sizable real estate business in Central Texas. Residential flips, commercial lots, rental units, you name it. My parents, Verna and Russell Wells, started it 30 years ago out of a dusty trailer and a line of credit they nearly defaulted on. They turned it into an empire. And like every good Southern legacy, they always claimed it was for the family. Except the word family never included me in any way that counted. Growing up, my older brother Lance was the golden son. Quarterback, prom king, real estate prodigy by 22. He'd walk into a room and my dad would light up like a damn Christmas tree. Me? I kept the books. I caught the contractor fraud. I was the reason our audits came back clean. But the praise? The seats at the boardroom table? Those always went to Lance. 3 years ago, my dad had a mild stroke. Nothing debilitating, but enough to push him into early semi-retirement. My mom stepped in to manage operations, and Lance, of course, was named acting CEO. Meanwhile, I gave up a 6-figure job offer in Dallas to help them through the transition. I didn't ask for a title. I didn't want applause. I just wanted to be useful, to earn maybe some sliver of respect. So I became the fixer. I handled code violations, negotiated contractor disputes, and rewrote our tenant lease agreements from scratch after a lawsuit scare. And when the company needed a bridge loan to lock in land for a massive subdivision project outside San Marcos, guess who had the clean credit and stable income to co-sign? Me. It's just a formality, my mom said. It won't ever affect you, Lance added. You're a lifesaver, my dad muttered, not looking up from his oatmeal. I signed, because I believed I was finally part of the foundation, that if I sacrificed enough, they'd stop treating me like a spare part. But sacrifice, I've learned, doesn't earn you anything in a family that sees you as utility. Over the last year, I noticed shifts. Passwords changed. My access to the property database got temporarily suspended. Meeting invites stopped coming. When I asked Lance what was going on, he smiled and said, "Mom's just trying to streamline things, less clutter." Clutter. That's what I was now. Then came last Monday. The call, the sentence, the silence. I sat with it, still. Then I poured a glass of cheap red wine and pulled out the one box they probably forgot I kept. My original co-sign documents. The ones with the notarized signatures. The ones showing my legal tie to that San Marcos land purchase. And underneath those papers, folded in a yellow file, was something I hadn't looked at in months. A copy of the deed. Not the new version they filed after trying to consolidate ownership. The original, with my name still on it. And that's when it hit me. They didn't just erase me. They forgot what I'm still holding. And I haven't even started using it yet. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of anger, but because my brain wouldn't stop replaying the timeline. Every late night I spent reconciling contractor bills. Every time I bailed out one of Lance's screw-ups without being asked. Every meeting where I sat at the end of the table and said nothing while watching him take credit for the reports I wrote. By sunrise, I'd come to one painful conclusion. I wasn't just cut out of the will. I was never in the family to begin with. The next morning, I drove out to the San Marcos property, just to see it again. Not the land, really. The contract. The labor. The soul I poured into making sure that mess of a site didn't fall apart when the first builder bailed. I still remember the week it rained nonstop, and the access road washed out. Lance was on a networking trip in Cabo, so it was me on site, knee-deep in mud, coordinating truck reroutes and laying down gravel myself with two-day laborers who didn't speak much English but offered me their only granola bar when I skipped lunch. No one thanked me. Not once. They just wired the next draw from the loan and moved on. That's how it always was. I cleaned. They clapped for themselves. So when I walked the perimeter that morning, boots crunching over weeds that never should have gotten that tall, I didn't feel proud. I felt duped. Until I noticed something. A wooden stake in the back corner with a bright orange tag. Phase 2. Dash owner, Lance Wells. Wait, I pulled up the current deed records on my phone. Sure enough, a recent amendment had been filed. The property had been quietly subdivided. My name. Absent. Only it wasn't. Not legally. Because that amendment? It was invalid. They'd filed it without a clean transfer from the cosigner. Me. They forged it. I stood there, staring at the stake, heart thudding so loud it felt like thunder in my teeth. They didn't just push me out. They committed fraud to erase me. And they did it like I wouldn't notice. Like I'd just keep working in the background, smiling, cleaning up the mud. Back in my car, I texted a single line to Ivy, my law school friend who worked in title law now. If a co-signed property deed was altered without consent and refiled, how illegal are we talking? She called me in 6 minutes flat. The thing about betrayal is, you don't always see it when it's happening, especially not when it's dressed like duty. And when it comes from your own blood, it feels less like a knife and more like a slow erosion. You barely feel it until one day there's nothing under your feet. But this wasn't erosion. This was arson. Over the next few days, I went through every document I had. Loan papers, notarized copies, screenshots of the email trail where I was CC'd on everything until I wasn't. Ivy looped in a quiet little title investigator named Charlie, and within 48 hours, he found it. The signature on the amended deed was cut and pasted from a 2-year-old lease renewal I'd signed electronically. They didn't even try to disguise it. And then came the punch in the gut. A buried memo from the firm that processed the amendment. It was billed as a routine internal restructure, initiated by Verna Wells, my mother. She knew. All this time I thought she was just following my father's lead, staying quiet, being passive. But that wasn't passivity. That was strategy. She filed the paperwork. She removed my name. She signed the memo. And then she called me last week to say I wasn't in the will, like she was just delivering bad news, when the whole time she'd been the one holding the knife. I sat on the floor of my apartment that night, surrounded by files and legal pads and half-drunk coffee. And for the first time, I let myself cry. Not for the money. Not even for the house. For the mother I thought I still had. But once the crying stopped, something else moved in. Not rage. Something colder. Clarity. And clarity has its own gravity. Because now I knew exactly what they'd done. And better yet, I knew something they didn't. They forgot to revoke one document. The master lien form, still active. Still under my name. Still legally binding. Which meant the entire property couldn't be sold. Not without my signature. And I had no intention of ever signing it again. The next morning, I walked into the office like I had for the past 3 years. Same worn laptop bag, same mug from my first solo project, same broken printer by the front desk. Except this time, I wasn't invisible anymore. I was a threat, and I could feel it. The receptionist, new girl, probably didn't even know my name, looked up like I was lost. "Can I help you?" I didn't answer. I just kept walking. The hallway was quiet. Too quiet. No usual banter, no hallway phone calls. And when I reached my old desk, the screen was dark. My login had been revoked. Figures. I walked past it and kept going. Straight into the shared conference room where Lance and my mom were in the middle of what looked like a very private meeting. The moment I stepped in, both their faces stiffened. Lance leaned back like he owned the table. You could have knocked. I pulled out a chair, sat down. You could have not committed forgery. My mom's eyes went wide, not shocked, just calculating. Cameron, she said slowly, whatever this is, let's not do it here. I laid my phone on the table, pressed record. You filed a forged deed with my name on it. You knew I hadn't signed it, and you sent it through anyway. That's felony fraud, Verna. Her face didn't move, but Lance's did. That stupid smirk faltered. I didn't yell. I didn't even raise my voice. I just started listing the facts, each one like a nail in the coffin. The original cosigner form with a clean timestamp. The mismatched digital signature from the fake deed. The metadata showing a cropped image file from a recycled document. And finally, the lien that was still active under my name, which no one had cleared. Lance muttered, Jesus Christ, and rubbed his temple like I was the one being unreasonable. I looked right at my mom. You knew. You signed it. You used me to secure that property, then cut me out like garbage. I was the only reason the bank approved it in the first place. You knew Dad's credit was trash, and Lance was, well, Lance. She finally spoke, voice low but sharp. You don't understand the full picture. We were going to bring you back in after the restructure, but you made this hostile. I blinked. Hostile? I leaned in. You faked a legal document and stole my share of a multi-million-dollar property. I'm not being hostile. I'm being awake. Then I stood up, grabbed my phone, and walked out. That afternoon, I met Ivy and Charlie again. This time at a neutral firm in Austin that specialized in civil real estate litigation. Ivy laid out the plan. Cease and desist letter to the filing firm, formal notification to the county clerk's office, and an emergency injunction to block the pending sale of Phase 2. The clock was ticking, and they were trying to move fast. Too fast. The thing is, they didn't realize I had already filed something 2 weeks ago when I first started digging. And at 6:47 p.m. that evening, it happened. I got an email from the county clerk's office. Amendment request for parcel ID number 4840. Pending rejection, unverified co-signature and title conflict. Attached was a scanned notice that had already been sent. To Lance and to Verna. Which meant they knew, right now, at this very second. I stared at the screen, heart racing. And that's when my phone rang. Block number. I answered. Dead silence for 3 seconds. Then my dad's voice, raspy, weak from years of smoking and bourbon, came through the line. Cameron, what the hell have you done? I froze. He hadn't spoken to me in nearly 2 years. Not since the hospital. Not since he looked me in the face and said, Your brother was built for this. You weren't? And now, here he was, calling me because everything was burning. I didn't respond. You're destroying the company, he continued. You're tearing us apart. You think this makes you right? I looked at the framed lien notice on the counter, my name in bold. Still valid, still powerful. Then I said calmly, No, I don't think it makes me right. I think it makes me finally visible. And then I hung up. But as I turned to lock up for the night, I saw something taped to my front door. Folded once, stuck in place with cheap Scotch tape. It was a letter. No envelope. Just one line handwritten in red ink. You were never meant to find out. No name, no signature. Just 7 words that made my skin go cold. I didn't sleep the night that letter showed up. I kept it folded on the kitchen table, staring at it like it might suddenly confess who sent it. 7 words. Just 7. But they rang in my ears louder than my dad's voicemail. You were never meant to find out. I knew what it meant. This wasn't just about a forged signature or a shady title transfer. Someone had planned it. Not in panic, in confidence. With the full belief I'd never be smart enough or bold enough to dig. And for years I wasn't. But that version of me was long gone. The next morning, I got in touch with someone I hadn't spoken to since grad school. Alina Parks, former finance law professor turned whistleblower consultant. Yeah, she was that kind of person. Clean lines, direct speech, and zero tolerance for bullshit. I emailed her everything. And by everything, I mean the full archive. PDFS, audit trails, metadata, screen recordings. I even included photos of the letter. She called me within an hour. "They didn't just cut you out," she said. "They built the system assuming your silence. That's why it's fragile. One small push." "I've already pushed," I said. "Then let's knock the whole damn thing over." She introduced me to a forensic accounting team. I took a deep breath and authorized a full internal audit. Not of the company, but of every single entity tied to Verna Wells and Associates. The shell firms, the vendor payments, the land acquisition trusts that Lance bragged about on LinkedIn like he built them from scratch. We cross-checked every invoice I had access to, and that's when the fire really caught. There was a pattern, almost too neat to be accidental. Property maintenance expenses tripled for 2 buildings. Consulting fees routed through an LLC registered to a man named Clay Morris, who just happened to be Lance's best friend from undergrad. And then the kicker. Recurring transfers labeled marketing partnerships. Paid out to a boutique PR firm my mother owned under her maiden name. A firm I didn't even know existed. They were laundering family money. I sat there, hands shaking, trying to decide what burned more. The betrayal, or how familiar it all felt. Because it wasn't just greed. It was disregard. They weren't even careful. I wasn't an opponent to outmaneuver. I was furniture. A faucet they assumed would always run quietly. Until I didn't. By Friday, Alina had helped me prep a file for the Office of State Ethics and Corporate Compliance. Not a lawsuit. Not a press blast. A regulatory inquiry. Clean, sharp, private, for now. But I wanted one more thing. FaceTime. So I asked to meet. Told them I'd reconsidered walking away. Told them I wanted to hear them out. They took the bait. We met at the same conference room where they'd once held the champagne toast announcing Lance as CEO. Same fake smiles, same polished lies. My mother was in Navy. Lance in his usual smugness. My dad didn't show. No surprise. Lance opened his mouth first. "Cam, this doesn't need to be war." I just smiled. "War? I thought this was a family." I laid a single envelope on the table. Inside, a copy of the draft report being filed with state investigators, with redacted details and a timeline summary. Nothing threatening. Just real. My mother didn't open it. She just stared at me with a mix of panic and something else. Maybe confusion? "Why now?" she whispered. "Why would you do this now?" And that's when I gave them the twist I'd been saving. I slid a second document across the table. This one not redacted. "Because this isn't just my name you forged," I said, tapping the header. Lance frowned. Read it. Paused. His face went white. Because the second document wasn't about me. It was about my father's personal trust account. The one Verna had quietly siphoned from for 6 years. The one she'd kept in Lance's name after the stroke. The one I had traced, line by line. She'd stolen from her own husband. And she thought I was the threat. Verna didn't speak. Didn't blink. Just sat there, breathing shallow. Lance stood up, fists clenched. "You don't understand what you've started." I looked at him, calm. "No, Lance. I finally understand everything." The fallout didn't come with sirens. No big courtroom showdown. No press conference. Just silence. Followed by the slow unraveling of everything they thought would hold. 3 weeks after that meeting, I got a formal letter from the State Office of Corporate Conduct. The audit had triggered a deeper financial review. Then came a second letter. From the Board of Property and Title Ethics. Turns out the forged deed wasn't just a civil violation, it was a criminal matter. And that's when it all broke open. Lance tried to play dumb. blamed it on clerical oversight. But investigators found that Clay Morris, the buddy he ran funds through, had already flipped, turning over transaction logs and encrypted emails, including one with Lance's initials and the subject line, "Don't tell Cam." He was disbarred from serving as a managing partner on any registered development entity for a minimum of 10 years. His fancy license? Gone. His position in the company? Vacated. As for my mother, she lost more quietly. No charges were filed. Not yet, anyway. But she was forced to step down from the trust board she helped build. Her name, once golden in local real estate circles, was now flagged on 3 separate regulatory watch lists. Worse than that, she lost control of my dad's account. When the trust attorney found the siphoned funds and confronted her, she tried to claim family discretion, but the signatures didn't match. And when my dad was looped in, finally, truly looped in, he filed to remove her as trustee. That part hit me harder than I expected. Because he didn't call me, didn't thank me, just made the move quietly, like a man too ashamed to admit what he'd ignored for years. And honestly, that was fine. I wasn't doing any of this for reconciliation. I just wanted the truth to have weight again. I didn't sue. I could have. Hell, Alina had the paperwork ready. But I didn't need a courtroom. I needed distance. And peace. So I offered them a deal. Full withdrawal from the San Marcos property, in exchange for a written release of claim and non-disclosure regarding my involvement. They accepted. Quickly. 2 weeks later, I watched a notary slide across the counter with a copy of the new deed. It had one name on it. Mine. I sold the property 4 months later. Quietly. Cleanly. Used the money to fund a community co-working space for women-led startups downtown. Something I wish I'd had 10 years earlier. And that letter, the one they taped to my door, that said, "You were never meant to find out?" I framed it. It hangs in the hallway of the co-working space now. Not out of spite, but as a reminder that I wasn't supposed to find out. But I did. And then I didn't stay quiet. Looking back, I don't feel proud in the way people expect. I feel grounded. Because the real revenge wasn't the fallout. It wasn't Lance losing his status or my mother falling from grace. It was that I got my voice back. I took the silence they counted on and turned it into a megaphone. And I walked away holding everything they tried to erase. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Sometimes the people closest to you will write you out of the story. Not because you're weak, but because they know you're the one who could have rewritten it better. So if you've ever been made to feel invisible or disposable, or like the cost of being quiet was loyalty, just know, silence is not the same thing as peace. And you can come back from it. If this hit close to home, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. There's power in being heard, especially when they never wanted you to speak. And if you're still here with me, thank you for listening. Feel free to stick around. This space was built for voices like ours.